Hey there, this is Christopher McClure from Wholeness Geeks, and this is Meditation Happy Hour. Happens every Friday uh, around 11 a.m. Mountain Time, and it's a time when I share uh, meditations, processes, and perspectives, um, both traditional and modern. Okay, so today what I'm going to share is it's a kind of a process, and it's simply a life story. Um, Part of a Enneagram study group, and um, so we're in this group. We're studying um, the Enneagram, of course, which is it's a container for for knowledge yeah, it's a container for knowledge, and it's a base three container for knowledge. And I'm not going to go into what that means, but the significant thing is that we've also looked at base two systems, base one systems, and base four systems. And as I was, and one of the assignments for this group was to create uh, a life story and put it into the Enneagram. And as I was, listing the significant events in my life, I realized, well, there was more than nine, and it actually there came out to be 16. And I thought, well, I'm going to use the base four system. So um, that's what I'm going to be. Uh, that's the container that I'm going to be sharing my life story through. And I will go ahead and share my screen. Um, let's see here. I think this will get, yeah. Okay, so this is as you can see, there's actually 16 points, and they number them up to nine, and then they do the rest with letters. Um, Either way, you can just do numbers here also. But anyway, these are the events, and I'm going to go through, and I'm going to briefly describe each event and say what I got from it, in terms of my whole life story and my current consciousness, what I got from um, each of these events. So, and then I'll come back and share some notes and talk about some, kind of more advanced things with this. And I will be sharing a blank one of these charts at the end. So anyway, let's begin. So my life began, or the memory of my life began when I was 6 months old, and I was being wheeled in a stroller by my mother around uh, Culver's Lake, which is um, right up at the tip, very apex of New Jersey, in Sussex County, in a town called Newton. There's a lake called Culver's Lake, and so that's my first memory, is being in that stroller, being wheeled around. And I think what I got from that event is very early on the sense of the circle, right? This circle, of course, the Enneagram has a circle also, this sense of wholeness. And like I introduced myself as a wholeness from Wholeness Geeks, that wholeness is a very important um, theme in my life. And that could certainly go in the middle here as a theme. I actually have it written in my hand chart, um, but I also have embodiment written there. So anyway, I got this very kind of like seminal sense of wholeness. When I was 2 years old, I was at a birthday party, and I was in a high chair, and I was situated by the food table, and on the table there was a bowl with peanuts, unshelled peanuts. And I didn't know that you're supposed to like take the shell off, so I put one in my mouth, and I think I was just kind of like, not really chewing the peanut, but just kind of like having that peanut in my mouth. And in the meantime, I was sort of like pushing myself, uh, my feet on the table. I was like pushing my high chair, and I actually pushed myself over backwards, and the peanut went down my windpipe and went into my lung. And it wasn't until the next morning that actually presented itself as a problem. It was turning blue, and basically I ended up in the hospital for 2 weeks with pneumonia. And I eventually coughed that peanut out, and it was all green and moldy. Um, but while I was there, if you know how when you're a kid and you're sick, and sometimes people will give you gifts, and I got a chalkboard and an eraser in chalk. And one night when I was sleeping, I had a dream that this goblin was chasing me, and in the dream he took a bite out of the out of the eraser, and when I woke up, there was a bite out of my eraser. So I think what this event, showed me is that the uh, the wall between, spirit and matter, between, the unconscious and conscious conscious realms, that it's thin. It's not as solid as we think it is. Okay, so then fast forward, when I was 12, I was diagnosed with a heart murmur, and as it turns out, it wasn't actually a heart murmur. It's mitral valve prolapse, but this divine illusion caused me to become, it was recommended that I didn't play. I had been pretty of a physical uh, child up until this point, um, you know, playing hard sports and actually being kind of a bully, uh, having internalized the aggression from my father, and uh, probably from other lifetimes. But this diagnosis caused me to um, it caused me to become introverted, and started studying spirituality and creativity, and started doing yoga. So it kind of did a very, abrupt course change in terms of my life, um, which um, ended up when I was 17. I was just beginning college, and I vowed to meditate every morning before I went off to classes. And on the third morning, I had a Kundalini experience, which showed me, the culmination of that experience showed me that I existed beyond my body, that I was eternal. So so this catapulted me into basically into meditating uh, every day, and I've been meditating. It's over 50 years later, and I still meditate every day. Um, so, and at college, I met I met a fellow, and I was I'm a musician, and I was in a band and playing with my brother and our friends. But in college, I met a guy who was a musician playing in a band, and um, I eventually joined that band, and moved into a an old farmhouse wherein we had what was called a commune, uh, and that band eventually we moved out to Colorado, and that uh, I think like the sort of the the divine purpose here was uh, plant to plant me at Naropa Institute, which is a Buddhist contemplative art school um, set up by Trungpa Rinpoche, um, a Tibetan teacher. And this experience was seminal. I had been working in preschools, and so I did a background in early childhood education, and um, plus I studied all five art forms, and plus I studied spirituality, and the effect of that uh, vortex is still running through my life. Um, but basically, after leaving Naropa, um, I moved into a house, and the woman who owned the house, Maria, she was very spiritual and very creative, and basically that environment gave um, a a context for developing for actually incarnating and embodying the spirituality that had been threading through these life experiences. And part of come part of what happened during that time and the next phase of my life was that I continued working in preschools, and one of the preschools I was working at, they had a whole Montessori setup, but no teacher. The Montessori teacher had left, and so I assumed the position and did a Montessori training, and and what I got from Montessori, um, one of the main adages of the Montessori training is that you can teach anything, no matter how abstract, to a child, but really in this case to any human, as long as you make it concrete. That's one of the principles of the Montessori environment. And that is an adage for embodiment, that basically, whatever it is you're experiencing, on a spiritual, a mental, emotional level, make it concrete. And so that's what I got from the Montessori experience, and I continued working in Montessori for a while. Um, but around in the early 2000s, or I think around maybe 2004, I um, I had been in a number of relationships, and um, they kept failing. And the reason they kept failing is because my critical nature kept sabotaging them. And I realized after this happened, like for the third time, I realized that this is like the internalization of my father, um, and I realized I needed to do something about this. So I went into depth psychology. I spent 3 years in therapy every week and did a lot of work, a lot of writing, created a whole album that was about um, that came out of that experience, and and basically got a sort of a handle on my criticalness. I didn't um, it didn't go away, but it became a something that I had a handle on. And so and part of what I was the goal of this was to find a healthy relationship. And so I entered into a relationship with this woman, Andrea, and she was is very spiritually inclined, and some people actually consider her to be have a an advanced state of realization. Um, so Andrea um, has she what she what she pointed out to me, what she showed me was what she brought alive in me was my own awareness, which is awareness is kind of like the flip side of criticalness. It's they go together. It's the um, sort of the spiritual side of criticalness, and she brought that alive in me. And one of the things that she made me see was that there's a typology system called the Michael system, and there's 7 different types. There's the warrior, the artist, the king, the server, the sage, the priest, and the scholar. And it turns out that I'm a priest primary with an artisan like secondary. And I was, even though the priest was active, had been active, throughout my life, I wasn't really owning that type. And I was sort of hanging out more in the artisan, and she made me sort of realize that that was my primary, and really kind of own that uh, that type, the priest, own the priest in myself. Um, Interestingly, though, um, I realized that Andrea was embodying the same criticalness as my father, and that I had been repeatedly picking women to be in relationship with who embodied this criticalness of my father. And when I realized that, it kind of woke me up. It sort of like it put it sort of cut this thread that was you know that was stringing through my life of basically looking for approval from my father through women. And when I realized that, I started choosing um, women to be in relationship with who were not that. And while I was in a relationship with a woman who was not that, we went up to a yoga center called Shoshone. It's in the mountains here. I'm in Boulder, Colorado, and it's up in the mountains. And while we were there, there were these early morning puja ceremonies, and during one of these puja ceremonies, it just sort of like I had thought of this before, but it just kind of landed very solidly how that what I've been exploring spiritually, each one of these were like a facet of the face of God. And the Enneagram was a container for these facets. You could look at them as facets of the diamond of universal consciousness. And from that, I created a system uh, called Poise, Principles of Inner Shift Evolution. And that began my taking myself seriously as a organizer of spiritual wisdom. Um, and that has continued to today. The next significant event in my life was meeting my wife. Um, and my relationship with my wife is one of seeking completion. I realized that there was a a big weakness in myself that um, I needed to fill that in. I needed to strengthen, and what it was the ability to love, the ability to care, and um, love came very easily in this relationship, and not that that stayed um, because now what I have to learn, I have to actually learn how to love. When it comes easily first, it kind of shows you what's possible, and then you have to kind of go back and do your homework. And so um, I'm currently in this phase of learning how to love, and there's kind of a contract that we have, my wife and I have, where um, we're helping each other towards our wholeness. Um, so then along came COVID, and I believe that when you get COVID, it's an opportunity for reset. And when I say reset, I mean like in a big way, you know. And unfortunately, most people, when they get COVID, they're waiting to get back to normal. But that's not the way I see COVID. COVID is like, it's the opportunity to shift into something new. So there's a very, unless you've come away with a big realization from having COVID, I feel like you haven't really gotten the full gist of that event. Anyway, the first time I had COVID, I found myself um, uh, realizing this, we'll just call it a practice, the practice of inner shapes. And basically, it's when you close your eyes, there's the inner landscape that you see, and you can contour the edges of what you're seeing. And in that, it's a way of developing your inner sight. But those shapes that you see, the shapes connect there's darkness, right? There's black in those shapes, and that black connects to what I call the absolute, or it's like the black hole at the center of the universe. Um, in the Buddhist tradition, they call it shunyata. In the Hindu tradition, they call it para Brahman. Brahman is God, and para is beyond. It's beyond God. It's the formless. It's that from which we all come, and to which we all return. It's yeah, I think that's all I'll say about it. Anyway, that's very, very powerful practice of connecting to the absolute through this inner kind of vision. The second time I had COVID, which was just the end of last year, the end of 2023, I actually ended up in the hospital for 11 days, and one of the things that I got from that experience was what I call the soul kernel. And the soul kernel, I've actually talked about it and demonstrated it, and taught it on this channel, the Meditation Happy Hour, referred to it numerous times. And basically, its soul kernel is a it's a portal for the soul into this body. And basically, it's four things. It's the Dantian, the pulse, the interlacing triangles, or the six-pointed star, and the mantra Om Mani Padme Hum. And this combined composite meditation is the soul kernel. And so then back in April, I was flying to Las Vegas to do a AI bot summit. And I got to the airport and I could not log in on my phone. I couldn't log in to get my check-in pass, to check in. And so I had to wait in line. By the time I got to the desk, the flight was too late. And so I had to wait in the airport for like 12 hours. And during this time, I realized a certain spiritual principle that needed to come forward like 24/7 in my life. And I call it what the who. And what it is that, like I said, I've been meditating for 50 years. So there's a lot of developed intention. I've developed the ability to focus on things and to maintain a focus, sustain a focus, and but at some point you realize that this focus can actually turn around and look at who is looking. And when you do that, you realize that the who that is looking is not actually like a static, stable who. It's actually, it goes back into an infinity. So that's the what. The what is the infinity. It's the what of the who that you think you are. So that was a very important piece to bring in, and which really is, it's kind of like the whole message of the Bhagavad Gita, that Arjuna, he is the warrior, and he's having to go to war with his relatives on the other side, and but that it's the realization that we're all God and we're all connected, and this is just the role that we play in life, whatever that role is. The most current realization is what I call Hermes. Hermes it's derived from Hermes, and Hermes is the god he's the messenger god, and he's also the god of transitions. And what I've realized is that, especially in the way that I've set my life as a wholeness geek, I strive to be all of who I am. And when I see an aspect of my wholeness that I need to develop, I think of an activity that can develop that, and then I place it in my life, in either my daily life, or my weekly life, or my monthly life, or my yearly life, but it happens with some regularity. And so there's a bunch of these activities, and each activity is sort of like a different aspect of consciousness, or a different self, inner self. And the way the universe works is that each one of these different selves or consciousnesses is like it has its own intelligence, and the the intelligence likes to be honored, both in terms of um, excuse me, both in terms of um, having occupied it, uh, both in terms of being welcomed into it and having occupied it. In other words, if you're moving into one of these activities to ask to be, permission to be welcomed into it, and if you're moving out of it to honor that you have just spent time in it, and that you um, that you're thanking it and leaving it, so that permission of transitioning is a herm is it's like usually like a statue or an altar, and they have them, I think, in Europe in like at crossroads and things like that. And so, but a herm can be any um, any kind of homage to the transitioning between aspects of your life. And this herm is actually turns out to be a combination of um, these three major realizations, and it's the her this is the herm, the transitional herm that I use in a lot of I have a few different ways that I you know that are activities or meditations that are transitions, but the main one is what I call I had, um, which is I, the small I, with HATT, which is hoop and the tree. And hoop and the tree is American Indian um, philosophy that the tree is like the masculine, and the hoop is the feminine, or the creation. So you have the spiritual and the you have spirit and matter basically, and they combined. And I just wanted to finish with the um, how the I hat is a combination of the soul kernel and the inner shapes, and what the who. So like I said, there's the inner shapes. You're contouring the edge of the inner shapes. Well, with the soul kernel, there is this. You're taking the the sides of the down in the dantian with the pulse. You're taking the sides of the interlacing triangles, and so the 6-point star is like it's like a yantra, repeating visual. So you're going along the sides of the triangle, the bottom of the upward facing triangle, the bottom, the right side, the left side, and then the downward facing triangle, the base, and then the right side and the left side. And you're following this repeating pattern, and it's driven by the pulse. And I'll and then the entrained to that yantra the is the mantra Om Mani Padme Hum, which basically means the universe is found in the center of your heart. Um, well, if you take interlate the 6-pointed star, and you make it horizontal, then that 6-pointed star can wrap around the edge of these inner shapes that you're seeing. So what you're doing here is you're combining, the structure of the interlacing triangles with the the um, the what the isness of the inner shapes that you're seeing. It's like you're combining structure with what is. And you're combining the soul with with creation, basically, and so that becomes the I had, and that is the that is the the way that I am. So if whenever I move into the next activity, I'll take a few moments and usually kind of just sit down, close my eyes, and then and do this with the inner shapes for a minute or so, and it really it refreshes me, and it creates a transition into the next activity. It sort of like creates a blank canvas to go on to the next activity. So those are the events in my life story, and like I said, they add up for me. They add up to um, basically embodiment, right? Every one of these. Um, we'll go back to the chart. Every one of these events is pointing towards embodiment. I was told by a spiritual teacher that uh, the last life I ascended. I actually went to spirit, and um, that that's not my uh, that's not my mission in this life. My mission is to bring spirit into into the physical, into life. Um, so this is for me the major theme is embodiment and wholeness. You know, the embodiment is wholeness. Wholeness is is looking at all the facets of God, and even the ones that are that you're weak in, and um, strengthening them so you can be all of who you are and you can be whole. So that's it for today. I will. Oh, um, I just wanted to. Yeah, a couple of notes is that the value of doing the life story is that there were significant events in my life that I wouldn't have considered, if I didn't take the time to just kind of like move through my life in a systematic way, and and actually record them and write them down and situate them. The other the other value of doing it, and especially getting it on a chart like this, is that you see culminations. You see how things group together to find um, to things group together to create outcomes that um, could not have been created by any single event. And what that shows to me is that there's an intelligence. There's the intelligence of the soul that is, it's like it's beyond what we can think of. It's like it's like we kind of like move along like this, but there's something that's kind of like guiding us. And even when we seem to be moving in a direction which is not the way we want to go, it's actually being orchestrated by something, by a greater intelligence. And there's also, one of the values of doing this kind of charting is that you begin to see how certain events relate to each other. In the end, I'm going to go back to the share for this. In the Enneagram, um, there are inner lines, just like there are in this chart. There's more inner lines in this chart because there's more points, there's more components. But you can see that, like, from point one go if you goes to point five, right? So the lake goes to the band uh, wind chant, and then goes to goes back to the heart murmur, and then goes to didn't want to here. Let's stop this gal. Um, Goes to what the who, and then to the Enneagram, and then to inner shapes, and then back to the lake. It's like there's and this is something I haven't really explored yet, but there's these like mini little sequences that and so the peanut goes down to depth psychology, um, and then over to Naropa, and then to the soul kernel, and then down to Marya, and then from there it goes to Andrea, and then back to the peanut, right? So there's these inner sequences that, um, like I said, I haven't explored it yet, but they're interesting to me to actually think of how these certain of the six of these 16 events relate to each other, and in a particular sequence, in a succession of this one comes before that one, and this one comes after. So yeah, the inner lines I find fascinating. Um, so I will put a blank. I will post a blank chart um, in 3 groups. One is the Wholeness Geek group, Facebook group. The other is the Gaia Core Facebook group, and then the Welcome to the Shift Show Facebook group. So this is Christopher McCord from Wholeness Geeks, and this has been Meditation Happy Hour. And today I explored a life story, and using the base for um, uh, container of knowledge that is similar to the Enneagram, but just more expanded. Um, but life story is something that you can do too. And if you do something like that, please let me know in the comments. So thanks for listening.